Welcome everyone to Cisco Canada's Virtual Kitchen. This segment around the booth or show around the booth with Matt, Rolfe. Matt, welcome back. I'm excited. I'm actually pumped today for today's show.
Jay, I'm super excited about the guests that we have, and more importantly, the conversation we're going to get into. I think it's really timely based on where the industry's at.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's going to be a blast today. And you know what? Thanks again for putting this all together, Matt. I'm going to start quoting you in some of these big titles, but I really believe you are Canada's leader edge. I don't even want to call it, but you are the hospitality coach for Canada. And I am just thrilled to work with you and to have you have a show on our show with us around the booth. So thanks so much for all you do for our industry.
Thank you for the opportunity, Jay. I appreciate it.
Oh, yeah? So I have very little sleep. So let's get into the intro and invite these amazing people into our show today. And we'll be right back, folks, right after this intro. So, Matt.
Yes, Jay.
So what are we talking about today? It's like big picture of me on the screen. That's all you want to see in the morning. What are we talking about today with these amazing people?
I think what we set up today, and I know Jay said he got a little sleep, so we're going to bring the energy today, Jay. We're going to bring the heat. We're going to bring some real great value to anybody out there listening. But what we're going to get into today is with two incredible leaders who have different ranges of experience through the pandemic. We're going to get into what did we experience through the pandemic, where are we at, and most importantly, as leaders, what do we need to do forward to serve ourselves, serve our people, serve our operations. And I think we want to just get into that and hear from people what their true, candid, vulnerable experiences were. Because I think based on these two leaders, we've all got a lot that we can listen to, but more importantly, take away from.
Awesome. Well, let's bring them in. We'll bring them in right now. Here we go. We'll let you do the intros here, Matt.
Awesome. So I'd like to introduce two industry leaders. In my term, I'd like to say legends. I also like to call them friends of mine. First, I'll introduce Michelle Kane, who is the chair of the Hospitality Management Program at Centennial College. I had a chance to meet Michelle as I launched my businesses over 15 years ago, and I'd love to get more into the story, and I often share it in my presentations, but Michelle was somebody who kind of took me under her wing and gave me an opportunity to get exposure to some great leaders in the industry and help me grow my business. But more importantly, she taught me what relationships are all about, what it's like to really be there for other people and hear them and support them. So thank you for being on the show today, Michelle.
Thank you for having me, Matt, and thank you for those lovely, kind words. I've learned just as much from you as you have from me.
Thanks, Michelle. And I'd also like to introduce George. George, a great friend of mine, so VP of Ops at Woodbine Entertainment Group. George is on the show today from the beautiful Woodbine Club at Woodbine Racetrack Center. He's overlooking the racetrack right now. But George is someone I've had a pleasure to work with over the last decade. And what I admire most about George is just the consistent, relentless leader he is in the ever-changing environments of Woodbine and really the casino and racing space. And George is going to share some great experiences with us here today as well. So we're going to jump right into it. And as I shared up front, as we brought you in from backstage to front stage, what we want to talk about today is really what have we gone through during the pandemic? So what have we experienced over the last couple of years? Where are we at? And more importantly, what do we need to do as leaders to continue to move ourselves forward, but be there to support our people and also be there to support our operations? And I feel that if we can get into the heart of that conversation today, we can sure bring value to anybody who's out there listening to the show and hopefully help them get the awareness they need to move their operations forward. So Michelle, first what I'd like to jump into is what was it like working virtually over the last 2 years? How did it impact your relationship with your team? Tell us a little bit about that experience.
All right. So let me just preface, we're talking about hospitality leadership, and of course, we're on a food service foodies show, which I respect. So I want to share that I come from a background of restaurant leadership. I come from a background of, this year I celebrated 30 years in hospitality, which I'm very happy about and proud, started in food service. So my leadership and my And, what I'm about to share comes from that. And, who would have thought that would have led into academics? So as chair of hospitality management, I have the opportunity to lead and coach and work with some phenomenal leaders when it comes to hotel, events, and food and beverage leadership with our faculty at Centennial College. And so we, I have to say, I'm going to speak from, and we speak from a place of privilege. We got to transition and work from home for the last 2 years, and it was an easy transition ish. And by easy, meaning we can do what we do at home. There's a lot of work to do that, especially when it comes to engaging students, when it comes to delivering our signature learning experience at Centennial College and the School of Hospitality, Tourism, and Culinary Arts, because our students learn hands-on. They're in culinary labs, they're in bake labs. For hospitality, they're in the beverage lab, they're in the restaurant, they're serving guests, they're learning how to set up a room for an event. So for us to move online was challenging, but but when I say privilege, that our business didn't shut down. We were still able to do what we do, and that's educate students, prepare them for jobs in the industry. So thankfully, we did work from home, and within the last 2 years, we had some opportunities to go back on campus when the province was kind of opening up and closed, open up and close. Post-secondary went back and forth, and so for the most part, yes, at home, yes, virtual, yes, blessed that we could still do that. But there were some challenges, and that again was translating experiential hands-on learning virtually, trying to describe the taste and flavor of a Bordeaux to our students online, trying to describe what it's like to carry a tray with those champagne flutes. We relish in the opportunity for students to spill a glass of wine on a guest. That's real world, right? Yeah, when you come to our restaurant, the local at Centennial College, the food is phenomenal. Our culinary students are doing great things, but it's also a learning space, right? Our students are learning how to cook a la carte and serve. So doing that online was the hardest. Teaching and showing and telling our stories online was challenging. But again, we have a phenomenal team of educators. So yes, we did work from home. We went back and forth, and it did change the way I led. And it did make me, I think, a better leader. And of course, you'll have to ask my staff. But I've definitely learned a lot about leadership, coaching, and also, funny enough, reflecting back on some challenging situations I had in my own career in food and beverage, and somehow pulling on that and using it to be a good academic leader.
Yeah, and I love that. If for anybody listening out there, so not only did Michelle have to lead a team, so her own team through this challenge of the pandemic and interact with her leaders and her faculty, can you imagine moving full programs? So your college programs that are hands-on, that are intensive by design and by design through experience, but to do that successfully. And one of the benefits of that, and what Michelle can share with us today, and what she does, is she also has access to that next wave of future leaders in our industry. So right now we're in the workforce, thinking of what we feel our people need to return to the restaurant industry, to return to your space. How are they going to show up right in your restaurant? And that's today's generation, but Michelle's working with today's generation as well as the future generation, setting them up for success. And I think through this chat today, we're going to learn a little bit more about what they're sharing to her, what they're sharing to her faculty around what their wants and needs are, because it's not just what we want as operators anymore. It's really the next generation of leaders, which there's less of them than there are opportunities. So there is that choice to act and do different. But Michelle, when it comes to leading your own team, let alone your students, is there one thing that you learned through the last couple of years, through your experience of what allowed your team to stay connected? Because I do have exposure to some of your team. Stay connected, stay engaged, and continue to work through the real challenge of moving courseware from in person to online. What did you learn about your direct team through this experience working virtually that you can take with you forward?
I always knew that communication was key to good leadership, but boy, communication and different types of communication. I know you talk about this in your book, Matt, but I'm a talker, right? And so I'm a talker. I thrive on conversations and interactions. I also, like I said, grew up and was developed through great leadership experiences in the restaurant. So interacting with human beings is part of my drive. And so Zoom is huge. Zoom is new. Zoom is great opportunity. We use MS Teams and Zooms. Every now and then there was a go-to meeting and you had to learn the different controls, but communication is really key, and listening. As I said, I'm a talker, right? It takes me, I have to stop and think to listen, and not listen just to speak, but listen to what the person's saying and what they're not saying. So I've become a better, I think, communicator because I focused on that a lot in the last 2 years. As we are right now, we're sitting on this call and I can see George at work and I can see you in your home studio and you can see me at home. That was all new, right? We are now, we may have hung out at work, in the restaurant industry, you hang out at the bar after work, in academics, we hang out at school. We were now hanging out in people's homes. And so I admitted before that I was very judgmental in the first part of the pandemic of why are people putting on their cameras, right? Aren't you engaged? Faculty would get very frustrated about students. They don't look like they're engaged, but turning on your camera is not a level, it doesn't show the level of engagement. Turning off your camera is like, wait a minute, pre-pandemic, I never invited you to my home. Not that I have anything against you or issue, but this is my home, this is my space. And all of a sudden we're in each other's space. We can see what's happening. We can see pets and animals and children and the pictures that we never saw before. So for some people that opened up a whole new area of vulnerability. And even commenting, if I said, that's a cool sign, execution, Matt, tell me about that. Maybe that wasn't something you wanted to talk about, but I'm now in your home and I'm not bringing that up. So how we communicate what we talk about, but also allowing my staff and faculty who I respect, I call them staff, but really they're team members, and talking to them differently, listening to them differently, but respecting that as I'm on this call and we're communicating through video, I can see your home, I can see different things about you that I didn't know before. And I respect that. And even our one-on-ones have been different. So my relationship with my staff has been different, working virtually, but also there's a different level of respect when you see them grow. Putting new programs or academic programs online, you mentioned before, was a huge task. And as a manager, that's where I was a coach. They're high-performing individuals who excelled at doing something new, and that was online learning. And that took our relationship to different places. Because you can trust them differently. And then there were high-performing team members who this was new for them and needed a different type of coaching and different kind of communication. And I had to change to that as well. So communication changed immensely for me. Coaching changed immensely for me, but hopefully to make me a better leader. And like I said, we'll definitely have to ask my team for that. But the feedback that I'm receiving, and it has changed our dynamics. And the timing of this is interesting because it'll be interesting to see when we return back to face-to-face classroom this summer. That also return back to face-to-face coaching and leadership and communication, and see where that goes.
I love it. There's so much of what you just shared. There's a couple things I wanted to pull out from what you shared, Michelle, to the audience. And one thing I hope that we appreciate if you're watching this and not just listening is I'm a big believer and a fan of Tony Robbins, who shares that 70% of our results are driven by our physical state, how we show up. And you can see now, like I had a peer coach challenge me about 3 months into the pandemic and said, Matt, you can't be on Zoom. You have to be the best on Zoom. You've got a camera, you've got a sound, this sign it changes depending on the meeting that I've got. I've got 5 or 6 different messages. I want to get up to different leaders. But to Michelle's side, she shows up, like energy, tone, pitch, eye contact, and as strong of a communicator as she is, she's probably twice as good as a listener, attentive listening, because I think a hybrid model will still be part of our future. And I really, really appreciate that about just how Michelle shows up. And I can say, as I've had Zoom calls with Michelle's direct reports, they show up the same way. It's cultural. It's not just Michelle leading with this energy from the front. Meeting with Kristen, seeing how she shows up on your team is the same energy, the same pace, the same engagement. And I just love, that's an aha moment for me, because when you shared that, people's cameras on doesn't directly relate to their level of engagement. Are we understanding what's going on in their worlds in the background? So I thought that's a breakthrough for me. That's huge. Jay, before we get over to George, are we good to transition to a question with George, or did you want to?
No, just keep going. I'm listening away and taking so much from this. I do have a question for Michelle before we go to
Sure.
Jordan and stuff like that. Now, Michelle, do you see, because I was listening to a podcast this week about the whole idea around being attentive and on Zoom, and if you're not there, and do you see anything that we've really taken from this past 2 years? And we also need to learn from that to change into what we're going back into person meetings and conversations. Is there anything that we learned also, like the bad and the good, that we'll move into the next when we go back into person and stuff like that, for those independent operators that are out there that are going to finally have meetings in person again?
From one is, I was that front of the house manager that would, my pre-shift was, all right, so if you had a bad day at home, or, fight with your significant other, that's, you come into work, you're focused on the guest, you're focused on points of service, you're focused on what we do here. That for me has changed, right? Home
Oh,
life.
really? Okay, whoa, wait a minute. That's changed?
Yeah.
Really? No way. George, is this changing your world too? Probably. Really, that whole philosophy, because that's been around for years, right? Like that's amazing. Keep going, sorry, Michelle. I'm blown away. Sorry.
And so when I say it has changed, maybe I should say it should change. And
okay.
It should change, because people are if you're going to bring your whole self, you're going to bring your whole self. You're going to bring that feeling you had when you just slammed the door, when you left your house to go to work. You're going to bring those emotions. And, the company that I worked for when I was working front of the house wanted us to bring our whole selves to the table. They wanted us to provide this emotional service. And for me to provide emotional service, that's going to be the traffic that I dealt with, the fight that I had, the celebration. I may have left home in a great mood. All of that's going to come to my guest, and that is also going to come to your work. So now that we're seeing each other at home, that personal emotion, what's happening in your life, is coming to work, and those lines are blurred now. So when someone's having a good day at work, we didn't have the commute to cool off, to go home and deal with our family now. Right? So we didn't have that time, whether your commute was 5 minutes or 2 hours, we didn't have that. Everything was combined. Your kids were on your lap while you're doing a business meeting. And so as an employer or a leader, embrace that, embrace the good with the bad, embrace that even if you think you don't care, you do care. How you may not have the time for the small talk. How is your kid? How is home? But know that that's coming with that person. And again, there was a time where we didn't ask, are you up to working today? Not because you're physically sick, but are you up to it? And sometimes it's not that I have the flu. It's just your staff member or your team member just needs a mental break. They just need, I'm not in my full self today. We can force it, but service is not going to be great. And no, I don't have a sick note. I'm just not up to it. And again, 12 years ago when I was running shifts, that wasn't an excuse not to be on lunch service, was that you were just not feeling it. You were there and you wanted to make the money. And so our organization's allowing that, to give those days, can I start 2 hours later? I just need to decompress from what's happening. So long answer, I'm hoping that what's changing is that people's lines between work, personal is blurring, but employers and leaders and supervisors are embracing that blur and allowing people to really bring their true self.
Thank you. That was a great answer.
Incredible feedback, and just for us to really think, like, that's some stuff that we want to go back and hear. So not listen to, but really hear what Michelle shared, because not that it has changed, but it should change. And I think that COVID didn't create new issues. It just magnified pre-existing issues or opportunities. And this mental health conversation, or, one thing that I think both you and George are brilliant at, is seeing your people. I've seen you both work with your leaders to understand where they're, are they right to show up today? Where are they at? Not just professionally. And the days of, leave your stuff at the door and serve your guests, 100% all in every day, although you just had a significant issue at home, or, an incredible, you just closed on your first house or something, a big celebration win. It's how do we really see each other, a human to human connection, not just a transactional connection where I pay you for opportunity to serve guests. And I'm saying that example to be dramatic for effect here, but I do know from talking to hundreds of staff so far this year, there is concern about if it's transactional, they might not really be seen, heard, or valued. And I think there is the choice to change that, not only from leader to manager dynamic, but also making sure that it's manager to staff dynamic. So yeah, that was so much in there, Michelle. Thank you so much for sharing. And George, I'd love to kind of pull you in here now and just to kind of go on top of what Michelle just shared there. But how did the pandemic impact you as a leader? What did you learn about yourself? Sharing that Michelle just shared about communication and seeing our people. But when it came to really, because often it's easy to talk about others, but I'm going to put George on the spot right now to talk about himself. And really, what did you learn, George, about yourself as a leader during the last 2 years?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Matt. And again, thanks for having me on today. Yeah, obviously, listen, really, really difficult. I think when all of this really started back in March of 2020, we at Woodbine, we were welcoming, an average of 20,000 guests every single day. And that just shut down just overnight. Within our food and beverage teams across all different disciplines, we had, a team of about 800 people that, as of that day where we shut down, their lives were, pretty much changed. We didn't know at the time that it would be, 2 years plus, but, it was interesting for me because, very initially, when all of this really started, I was I think really fortunate to have been able to play a pretty significant leadership role in really trying to navigate through the early stages of the pandemic. But as we got into it further and further, and things felt a bit more, a lot more unclear and uncertain, there was a tremendous amount of fear that I was even feeling just within my direct report team and others in the company. And it was really just because we didn't know how long these really significant impacts were going to continue for. And for me, years ago, one of the things that I've learned about myself, and I've really been working to try to keep it in check, is I'm a pretty big control guy. So I really always need to be in the know. I always need to be 2 or 3 steps, ahead of things. I have to have answers for any question and every question that people ask of me. And as we got into the first and second month, and it was really starting to feel like we were going to be dealing with this really, really lengthy, significant impact to our people and our business, I found myself just not having the answers. So many of our core leadership team, they would have tons of questions. And I found that really, really difficult to navigate through. And honestly, it was an interesting experience because I don't ever remember in my career living through a time where my answer was, I don't know, to many of the questions. And that was really difficult for me. That really triggered, a bit of anxiety, almost a sense of letting people down. But I kind of worked through that. I think that in many of those cases, in dealing with those questions, I could have certainly put my corporate hat on and come up with some, cockamamie type of answer that really wasn't answering anything, but sounded smart. But, I think that the team really just appreciated that. I think it's, it was me, being vulnerable, at a time where I know there was just a lot of fear, a lot of uncertainty. And I think that allowed us, I think, to really kind of work through as a team. And as we navigated through, these really, really challenging times. But, we were dealing with questions of people just not knowing if they'd be laid off or not, right? Things were just so uncertain and so up in the air. And these were questions that were really, from our most senior leaders around just their livelihood and how they could provide for their families. So it was pretty serious stuff. But really happy to be able to look back and be able to see that we're certainly in a very different spot today. There's a tremendous set of optimism as we kind of enter in what I hope and I think all of us hope is the end of these terrible impacts of the pandemic.
And and Michelle and George, we'll kind of come back to this conversation, because one thing I'm so passionate about is working with leaders to take a vulnerability-based leadership approach. And George used some language there that I just absolutely love, because it's so real. And I don't share this as this is what you should do. I failed for years trying to have the answer. I failed for years. George used language trying to sound smart, but George used the word fear, which I thought was incredible and not a common word, right? And fear it's the core motivator for us as human beings. It's we're often driven, and it's something we feel on a daily basis. He also shared that I am someone in my very career who has had control. And then now what we've experienced is I had to give up control because I didn't have the answers, and I didn't have to force, sorry, George, is the wrong things, a corporate response to make sure people, felt the answer. I think there was so much power in George saying, I don't have the answer. Let me get back to you. Let me think about it. Let me go through and improving the relationship. But Michelle, was there any time through the pandemic where you felt fear, and what did that look like? Like, what's an example where that might have shown up, and how did you feel? How did you go through it?
Matt, before we get to Michelle, can we break for 1 second for commercial, and then we'll be back? Michelle, you just work on that answer there.
Good question, Michelle. Oh, there's the pressure.
We'll be right back, folks.
Kraft Hazelnut Spread is here with the classic taste of roasted hazelnut, skim milk, plus a touch of cocoa, perfect for a quick breakfast or an indulgent start to your day. As a decadent anytime snack, on the go, or even at the office. Or to create richly satisfying desserts, putting a new twist on your old favorites. Kraft Hazelnut Spread is made with no palm oil and is low in saturated fat. Chocolate hazelnut spreads are here to stay, and we're one of the fastest growing dessert ingredients, growing 18% in food service versus the previous year. And with snacking still a powerful trend, the demand for chocolate hazelnut spread-filled pastries remains high. Elevate your breakfast, innovate your desserts, or do both. It's the convenient new way to enjoy the taste of chocolate hazelnut. Kraft Hazelnut Spread.
Awesome. We're back with the SVK Network show around the booth. It's one of those days that just everything doesn't want to work with me, but
I think I heard an "oh crap" there between your edit. We did.
Did I say "oh crap"? Oh boy. Anyways, I have to say, and this is the best thing about the SVK Network. We're live, we're authentic, we're real. There's no editing and all this stuff, and I think that's important as we bring conversations like this to the forefront in our industry. And I want to share this with all of you, is that I've been in the industry forever and I've been doing all this stuff. I've never heard conversations like this about our industry until one, meeting Matt, but also just having you guys, but all of you, to open up on these conversations around this. Because I always think of this small little restaurant in Red Deer and them listening to this show and going, okay, well, what's this matter to me? But as we see the ownerships change to younger ownerships, younger managers, people that really, digest this kind of content and really take stuff from it, I'm blown away that the conversations like this are happening now and will change people in leadership for the future. And it's very strong. It's not the days like it was where you walk into work and you're dealing with these emotions and all these problems and you didn't have no one to talk to or listen to on conversations like this. So hats off to that. But I just wanted to throw that out there and just I sit here and listen to this stuff and it's just incredible. Like, I wish I had this when I was running restaurants back in the day. So awesome stuff. So sorry, Matt, I'll let you continue to it, George.
And then just to bring it back, one of the big things in this is in coaching, this is leadership or being more coach-like as a leader. One of our opportunities through the pandemic is to create space, and it's just space for a conversation. Use create space, hold space, whatever feels comfortable to you. And I know that language might sound big, but it's amazing once you, with intention, just have a conversation. And Michelle and George have shown up, real. And this is the stuff,
You're right, Matt, though. But that's the thing, Matt, that no one, I'm sorry to interrupt. And that's, it's my ADHD, which I did hear is a superpower, but it is, but we never had that. Like, these things never happened, right? And I remember running restaurants, and it's hard running restaurants. It's hard. I'm sure even worse than it is today than it was 20 some years ago. Um, so you didn't have any, like, where did you look up to? Right?
Yep.
Like, where did you learn from? And, I used to always say this when you look at people purchasing habits is, we work with restaurants and, like, to teach them in a sense on how to purchase, because where did they learn to to get their learnings on purchasing food for their restaurant? And then it usually came from mom and dad, right? Going to the grocery store. And what was the first thing they always said was, go look for the specials, right? Let's go find the specials. And like, there's a whole mindset shift there. So having conversations like this, leaders like Michelle and George here to share their experiences and their insights, it's huge. Like, I don't know if you guys know this, but it's huge having you share these, and what you do also then influences, and we talked about that before on the earlier pre-show, is just what George has done with what he does. That's in Matt's book. I'm not putting the book up today. Is in Matt's book, that I know people are going to think I'm getting royalties soon, but it's a good book. Is what you do, George, in your establishment there. It made me do something different within what the people I work with. You influenced me, so you're both. Let maybe even title them. You're like leadership influencers for food service. There you go, Matt. Huh? You like that?
That's amazing. And I wanted, just for example, let's see. And
I'll be quiet. Sorry. I just love listening to these things. They're amazing.
But Michelle, is there a point during the pandemic that she felt, fear? And George, I'll set you up for the same question, or that there wasn't as much control as you'd like, and kind of so people can get a sense of the actual situation. What was the kind of the event or situation, and what did you do to move through fear or move through letting go and control a little bit? And for anybody out there listening, this is putting respectfully Michelle and George on the spot a little bit with this question. So.
Well, you asked it a little bit before we went on commercial break, and I thought I had a good answer. And then Jay shared some stuff. Was like, oh God, that just made my mind go to different places.
I'm so sorry.
It reminded me of things. And so, because my first answer is, well, I didn't have any fear. And I didn't have any fear for a couple of reasons. And Jay, like I said, just reminded me, well, as I'm speaking and grateful to be part of this conversation, what does a small operator care about whether I was afraid or not? And so, again, to preface my experiences in the last 30 years, I said before in food services, two things is one, the hospitality industry, and my family and the way that I was raised. Those two things really formed me and are my foundation is my family, the way that I was raised in this industry. As many times as I've tried to leave this industry, I've always come back. And although I'm in academics right now, I'm very grateful that I'm working at Centennial College as a leader, an academic leader. I still feel entrenched and rooted in hospitality. And so that's where this no fear comes from. And so no fear, not to disrespect those that were fear, because there was a lot of uncertainty. And to George's point, as a leader, people came to me with questions. And I felt supported to say, I don't know. I felt that support, right? My role as an academic chair is the first role I've had in my career that I wasn't an expert in the roles that report to me. So when I was a restaurant manager, I was an amazing server. I was a great bartender. I was an amazing host. So I knew all those roles. As an academic chair, I am not an amazing professor. I have amazing professors. I have amazing faculty. I have amazing instructors, but I wasn't an amazing professor. I was good. Right? I had this opportunity to transition from industry teaching part-time at George Brown College 12 years ago with some great leaders and mentors in my life that opened the door for me to do that. But I wasn't a great professor. I coach and I work with amazing faculty who've been professors for either 2 years or 30 years, and I learn from them every day. So I didn't have fear, although I knew there was uncertainty and people didn't know what was going to happen next, because I felt supported both by my team and the organization and by my family. COVID stories are, I think, stories that I hope we never lose. Every individual can write a COVID book because we all had different experiences. And, part of, being part of a bigger institution, the great thing about being a part of a bigger institution, to George's point, is like, I don't really have to have the answers. Let's wait for an email to come from the vice president of academic. Let's wait for an email to come from the president. They will give us direction. Health and safety will say who can come on campus. Health and safety will work with HR and come up with our immunization policy about vaccination passports and what have you. I didn't have to have those answers. What I did have to have, and what I appreciate the opportunity, was help when there was uncertainty. Coach and guide, okay, we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, but let's deal with what we can deal with today. Guiding my staff to say, let's focus on what we control. I know there's a lot of questions out there, but what can we control in this situation right now? If we can't control it, not that it doesn't matter, it matters, but let's try to put our energy in what we control. We can control while we talk to our students. We can control the curriculum. We can help our industry as much as possible and connect industry partners that are reaching out for us because they're about to reopen and they need staff. So let's get those students hired. We can control that. We can control how we talk to our partners, our PAC members like Matt and other leaders that come and meet with us virtually to talk about what the industry is going through. We can control the narrative to our students that are unsure. Did I pick the right program? Because the industry doesn't look great right now. That we can control, right? We can't control what the city of Toronto is going to say, what you need to be able to come into class. We can't control that our students have to wear masks while they're cooking and can't taste the food. But we can control how we teach, how we deliver. And for me as a leader, I can control how I treat my staff, how I treat my faculty, right? I have faculty who are high performers when we were in person, but did not transition well online. I can control how I speak with them, how I talk to them, how I help them and coach them through online learning, right? And so I try to focus on what I can control. So to have no fear is not to say that I was ignorant to the situation, but again, rooted in both my family and this industry, who both taught me so much. But one of those things is, first, for my family, was having faith that things will happen the way they would happen. Yes, people are going to lose their lives. That is unfortunate. People died during COVID, right? So because of this. And so to respect that, but also to move on, right? And so for me, having a strong, I'll use the word religion. I don't love the word religion, but having faith for me, it was like, okay, one of the biggest lessons I think for many, I'm going off on a tangent right now, is COVID taught us we're human beings. We are smart. Human beings are smart, but we don't always have the answers. There was a time where no scientist, no politician, the Queen, no one had the answer at some point in the last 2 years. And that's a little refreshing for someone who has faith in a bigger power, right? And so for me, that's where that no fear comes. The no fear comes from focus on what you have control over and just have faith that things will fit. And if they don't fit, we'll figure it out because we are smart mammals, we are.
And that's, there's a whole podcast show on the concept of, our psychology around the problem. So are we going to focus on the problem or the solution? So I can see, number one, as a coach, that Michelle likes to operate, she thrives in uncertainty. So she's able to provide a solution and move through uncertainty. And for the listeners out there, there are different personality types, and there's usually two core ones where, from a human behavior standpoint, we either operate in certainty or uncertainty. So we can see Michelle's power, and then supporting those around her to also give them the context, the story, the understanding of how do we keep people who operate in certainty moving forward through uncertain times. So I think that's brilliant. And again, it's just energy. So right now, if you're a small restaurateur in Red Deer, or you're a multi-site operator in BC, or you're a national chain based out of Toronto, you have a choice on how you approach your next set of problems. And I say that respectfully, but Michelle's looking at a solution-based mindset, but also, from what I've heard in that, is not having to have the exact answer. We might not be able to exactly define. We know where we want to be in 3 months, 6 months, and 12 months, but we have to be flexible on our approach right now, as we have the target's the same, but the approach is different. George, I wanted to kind of move on to, a little bit of a different question. So we're going to add some texture to the conversation, moving from leadership into really looking at businesses forward. Is, what does return to work look like for your team? And I know there's a lot of growth coming up for your organization, which is really exciting. Maybe you can share with us a little bit about what growth looks like, and how are you going to retain the people that you have and recruit what you need to be able to support the growth coming in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Yeah, listen, a really, really exciting time with some pretty expansive growth that we've got coming at our Woodbine site with the opening of the new casino resort this fall. And the role that Woodbine plays is really from a fruit, from a purely food and beverage perspective, we operate the majority of F&B. So with the new casino resort, there's a ton more programming that comes online with that. So I mean, for us, we've been on a path already with returning team members to work. Even during some of the start stop, and it's really the approach. As I look back, the approach that we took upon welcoming team members back was we really were trying to be as thoughtful as we could with the fact that team members would be coming back with fear, right? Health and safety fear, like just real concern about returning to workplaces where there may be risks to them. So we really took a very, very thoughtful approach in really trying to make them feel not only welcome, but, welcome like a guest, like a customer. We develop, many programs to, and to really take our time with them to review all of our safety protocols. And goodness, we have so many of them, but thankfully it's kept everybody safe. I'll share one just really quick story, but we had a team member who was very hesitant about returning to work. And really, really good team member, had been here, for many, many years with us, is still here with us today. And, upon us, exercising our right as an employer to recall them back to work, they filed a grievance because they just felt that their health and safety and that their safety was going to be at risk in coming back into this setting. And it was really, really interesting that within, he did return to work. He worked 3 shifts. And during those 3 shifts, we were able to provide him with all of the really great onboarding programs that we had developed. And after the 3rd day, he went to one of our leaders and asked to cancel the grievance, to actually pull it back, because he was feeling much more comfortable. He was appreciative of the efforts that his employer and his department had taken to really ensure his safety. So. I thought that was an interesting story because I think that is, we've been very blessed to have that sentiment right across all of our frontline team members upon their return to work. So we're open today. We continue to do very well. We're quite stable as it relates right now to having proper resourcing to be able to look after our operation today. But as we move forward here, and I'm very, very soon with my leadership team, we're going to be in front of having to hire several hundred people, new people that we don't have today, to be able to do all the great things that are contemplated in some of our expansion. And we're really going to have to amp up the overall experience that we create, not only for all of our frontline team members, but really our leadership teams, and really spending time to create the absolute most fulfilling and just overall excellent experience for them. Because it's really tough to recruit right now. I think we're all feeling it. I think the industry is feeling it. Even myself as a customer. I don't think this industry is at its best right now, and I think that it's probably just a product of, I think, everyone just really trying to do the best that they can. And don't take that comment the wrong way. I appreciate that all operators, including what we're doing here, we're doing the absolute best that we can. But things have changed, and I think that we have to really study what the environment was within the food service industry pre-COVID. And really identify some shifts that I think we all have to make, because there are not as many people that are actually looking to either get into this industry or to return to this industry if they've moved on. So I think really putting a great degree of focus, and that's really where my leadership team is right now, as we're starting to plan for what the exiting of COVID is really going to look like for us, but really putting a ton of focus and a ton of effort, as much as we can, and really making sure that our core leadership teams have the clarity they need. They feel supported. They're feeling like their contributions are there every single day they show up. We have to create more opportunities for us to listen to them and to act upon their suggestions, because they know better than we do. They're there. They are shoulder to shoulder with our front line. They're working closely with customers. And I think that, as much as we talk about the fact that we want to, as senior leaders, create a great environment for them, we really have to show them through our behaviors and the shifts that we're going to make to really make them feel that this is a great place for them and a place of learning and development, and that they're really making a difference every day.
I love, like, George, there's so much in there that I know Jay's going to take a quick break here that I'll get to after the break, but just the one thing as we go into break for those out there and for ourselves is George uses language, feel. And a lot of us are out there, we have safe environments, but if our people don't feel safe, feel supported, feel invested in, feel connected and engaged, like that, if we went back and listened to that, language matters. George used the word feel. I think I marked down here, if anybody sees me writing notes, probably about 10 times, because that's part of his value, right? So we can do things that we think are safety. We are safe, so why don't they feel safe? We went and took an example of a very important team member, and we doubled down to make them feel safe. And that's not just about the experience with us and that one team member that George shared. That message goes across to every single person in the organization, and it also creates a leadership expectation. So more on this after Jay's break here now, but George, I got a couple follow-up questions for both you and Michelle.
Looking for staff training, food cost advantages, interested in robotics for your business? Cisco Advantage features best-in-class companies to make sure you have the right tools to optimize your business and increase traffic. We have negotiated exclusive Cisco discounts with business partners to help you compete, stay in the game, and focus on what you do best. Our collection of offerings includes specialized services, technology, tools, and personalized consultations designed to make you more efficient, increase your profits, and make it easier for you to manage your operations. Visit cisco.ca or speak with your Cisco representative to learn more.
Awesome. Well, I'm just going to welcome everyone back to the SVK show around the booth. Matt, this conversation is getting better and better and better, and I'm just enjoying so much of it. So thank you so much for putting this together today.
No problem. And I appreciate where the conversation has gone. And I wanted to highlight a couple things that George said. And I want, again, thinking about the audience is how we want to drive this conversation. Some of you might be, hey, my team is back. So they're already back. So how do I manage this situation? And just because they're back doesn't mean that they're feeling safe, feeling supported, feeling engaged. So if you've been back, if someone's catching this in the US and you've been back for 18 months, or you've been back in Ontario here full capacity for a couple of weeks, George said that we're going to welcome every staff member back as if they were even a guest. If they're a guest and customer, and that's an aha right there. It's like, holy, can't swear on Cisco's TV show, but just for effect there, I would. What a powerful statement. And I also think that stop there. If you can focus on, are you treating your staff? Sometimes you're looking for the answer, and today I'd like you to focus on the question to take away from this show. Are you treating your people, your managers, your leaders, and your staff as if they're a guest, providing them the same experience? And if you just spend some time in the question over a coffee this afternoon or tomorrow morning and write down you can literally jot down on the back of a napkin, what can we do to get stronger, better, faster, more engaged there? The other thing I want to share is George referenced he has to hire hundreds of staff. And a lot of us right now are having a conversation in our minds saying there are no staff in our city. I can't find people. They're not available. The one thing that we do know, and we, as Michelle shared, we are incredibly resilient, and we found a way to do that through the pandemic, is everything happens with intention. George's team is actively working today on strategies on how they are going to attract hundreds of employees. So retain their core group, which is most important. We retain our core, the people that know our values, supported us, been with us. Now we're building a strategy to attract, and then we're going to onboard and integrate these teams. And he said it's not just about the hundreds of frontline staff. He also shared that experience was also gets stepped over. How am I going to continue to make my leaders and managers feel supported? How am I going to make them feel developed so they can onboard these people? So I think one thing that I share is both Michelle and George have shared incredible experiences here, and success leaves clues. Michelle is interacting daily with industry leaders as well as future leaders, students that are coming through her programs. But she has partners from, all areas of the Canadian food service industry. And George is already running a team of hundreds, if not, sorry, excuse me, George, I think you said there was 15 or 1,800 people on your team pre-pandemic. So we could be breaking the 2,000 mark sometime in the near future that are George, directly reports under George's departments. It's just incredible to see. So, Michelle, just what do you hear in the question, and then we'll move forward to our closing question for both of you. But what do you think about making our leaders, making our staff, get the same experience or welcome them as if they were a guest? Kind of what do you hear in that? Do you agree with George? Do you think of any ways of how could we welcome your faculty back, your team back, or how could people feel, just in a quick kind of bit of feedback, welcome them back as if they were a guest?
I love it. And some of the questions that come to my mind is the money that you're putting in your marketing budget to attract new guests. Are you putting similar amount of money in to attract new staff? Your social media, like what you look like on social media right now. Your social media, what's the word I'm looking for?
Social media spend or marketing, or
your spend, your brand on social media. When you're out there trying to push and get in front of potential diners and guests, you do the same for recruiting staff. Like if I was a young graduate, whether I'm a graduate from a hospitality program or not, do I see myself in your brand based on what you look like on Instagram? Do I see myself in your brand when I see the commercials that just popped up? The two commercials that I just saw, the Cisco's commercials, I could say I see myself and I'm seeing myself as a woman, as a Black woman. I saw myself in those. So do I see that in the brand? If you are, there's a lot of successful individuals in our industry that didn't go to hospitality school, did not go to George Brown or Centennial or University of Guelph. I did. I went to University of Guelph because that's the way my path went. But there's obviously a lot of people that didn't. But if that is one opportunity for you. So the effort that you make to make partnerships in your community to drive business to your restaurant, make that effort for recruiting. So have a partnership. And of course, I'm going to talk about post-secondary education, but make a partnership. There are 24 Ontario colleges and out there in Ontario. And I'm sorry, I don't know the number Canada-wise, but there are colleges and universities that have hospitality programs, but those that don't, and have students that need jobs. Another headline over the last 2 years, in addition to the pandemic, is post-secondary's dependence on international students. There have been positive stories and a lot of negative stories. But overall, not just in Ontario, throughout our country, post-secondary depend on international students, and a large percentage of them want to be Canadians. They want to be permanent residents. And so they're looking for jobs. Hospitality is a perfect job for a student, as we know. Restaurants, hotels, attractions, part-time events are a perfect opportunity for students. And again, it doesn't have to be a hospitality student. So go to those schools, go into your community and sell your brand like you were selling your brand to get clients and diners in your door. Because the job seekers out there are not the job seekers that were out there in 2020. In fact, I dare to even call them job seekers. They're just individuals, talented individuals that may not be looking, right? And so there is a huge opportunity to recruit differently, to like George says, is treat them differently. We need, and when I say we, I mean industry, we need them more than they need us right now, right? I heard from industry partners who were upset. I had an angry industry partner because she didn't appreciate, and I love her to death, and the way that I'm presenting it is I still respect her, and I saw it from her perspective is, why are you allowing these students to leave this job and go to another job? Because a number of our programs have placements. And the answer is because we're being flexible with our students. We're not condoning bad behavior, but our students are different than when I was a student. Our students will text a supervisor saying, I'm having a bad day, I'm not coming to work. Yep. Our students will no show, but still come the next day. And so if you are going to fire a staff member like I used to when I was a front of the house manager because they no-showed twice in a row, then you're not going to have any staff. If you don't change the way you lead by asking more questions, by listening to your staff. Another thing George mentioned was, he didn't say the word, but this is the word that came to my mind when he's talking about understanding your staff is empathy. right? It sounds like a fluffy word, but really take a moment and think, if you were that staff, and if you were 20 and you were dealing with a whole bunch of stuff and family and boyfriend and girlfriend and school and what have you, how would you react? Okay, so in the 90s, we reacted a little differently because we had this respect for our elders and our supervisors. That respect is not necessarily there. That respect is not given. It doesn't mean that they don't care about their job, but yeah, a lot of times they care more about what's going on in their immediate environment. So an empathetic you now is different than it was 2 years ago and 10 years ago. So unfortunately or fortunately, employers, managers, supervisors have to change. And I say supervisors as well because, again, they're the ones that have the direct impact to that line staff and to the guest, right? Me as a chair right now, I don't have that direct impact to the students. I hear stories, but it's my faculty. And so I have to support my faculty and understand and even take an empathetic view with my faculty and saying, what if I was getting all bombarded by all these students? What's happening? Am I on campus? Am I not on campus? I'm an international student. How does it affect? Like, imagine being an international student traveling during a pandemic in a country that you don't know, and now trying to register for college or university. Like, I have to take a moment and put myself in their shoes. And the same with employers and operators right now. We can't treat staff the way that we did. We can't have 3 no-shows and you're fired. I personally think we should stop asking for sick notes, because now you're asking someone to go to a doctor to find what's wrong, and just be open to, yes, there's going to be a lot of uncertainty every day for your shift because you don't know how many people are going to show up. But if you treat them like the amount of attention that you put into your guest and trying to get new people, your staff will see that, and I think they will put more into what they do every day because they see the way that you treat them and you're investing in them, investing in their training, caring about their lives. Even for the ones that maybe they don't want to share their personal life, but you are open and you're approachable and you're different, right? And I think even as we open up right now, if your staff see that you're doing business different, they may give you that benefit of the doubt that maybe you'll even manage differently and come back to work and leave that job that they left industry for a year ago and maybe come back because you're now doing business differently.
Yeah, I love it, and I've had some of those experiences of seeing great leaders return because they want to come back. They just needed the trust and the flexibility and the understanding. But we've got 2 minutes left, so this is the pressure round. This is the rapid fire round. I know, Jordan, we're going to start with you, but in 30 seconds, and I've got a sign that hangs over my desk that says "Clear as kind" from Brene Brown. But what's the one thing that you need to change, to focus on for yourself, George, as a leader, to lead your team, your operation, yourself forward for the next chapter? So probably not the context behind it, but what's the one thing you're focused on in your personal development? And Michelle, I'll have you close this out as well. But in 30 seconds, George, what are you focused on for your personal development to lead your team through this next chapter?
Yeah, it's really easy, Matt. It's about creating the space, right? We've been so disrupted. We've been so like our minds have been foggy over the last couple of years with what direction we're going into. And right now there's still so much noise. There are so many distractions that still exist. But I think really the role that I'm going to try my best to play with my senior leadership team is really creating the space to be as laser focused as we can with how we're going to create the greatest experience for ourselves as senior leaders, but also how we're going to create the greatest experience possible for our core leadership team. And we're in real time in discussions about really developing that laser focus.
Love that. Absolutely love it. Anybody out there working, the create space language is coming from the therapist industry, right? So it's very common there, and it has been for years, but I know my therapist pushed me through the pandemic around creating space. And I think it's a beautiful thought. Are we creating space and time to connect, to create that messaging, to create that alignment for others and for ourselves? We can't support others unless we support ourselves. You can't show up to others unless you can show up for yourself. So I really appreciate that, George. And I see for Michelle, in 30 seconds, kind of what's your core focus for yourself as a leader to support yourself and your team forward?
Situational and customized leadership is really what I'm doing with one individual may not work for another individual. And so there's going to be times and situations where they need more support, where I can be there. And this is for my team, but for anyone else that's managing teams, is that one day that person needed a lot of support, and there's other days just back off, give them the space. They're high performers. They can do their job. Sometimes they just need the space to do their job. Sometimes they need the space to make mistakes, and sometimes they need support. So for me, is really taking a time to So using my own discerning spirit of when to jump in, when not to jump in, when to listen, when to speak, when to coach, and when to just stand back and see what happens.
Love that, Michelle. Listen, engage, teach, coach. Those are all leadership ranges. So I talk for leaders. How do we have different ranges, like a 6-speed shifter in your car? So how do we have different range, different ability, and there are different approaches to really support our people as they need. So thank you to Michelle and George, and Jay, I'll turn it over to you to clear us up. What a
Yes.
powerful talk, and I truly appreciate the both of you. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely, super powerful talk today, and thank you, Matt, for putting this all together, and thank you, Michelle and George, for being on the show today. It's just outstanding. I hope that small restaurant in Red Deer takes some notes and ideas of this and really applies it to their operation. It will really shift and change your business. Just these small tidbits and amazing insights and information. It's incredible. So thank you so much. And for everyone else, we're back tomorrow with another SVK show, and then Thursday, and then Friday, and then we're back next week. So we're back all the time. So just continue to follow and subscribe everything on the SVK Network. We are the only live weekly streaming show there is in North America like this in food service. So thanks so much, Matt, and to everyone else. Have a great rest of your day, and get out there and support and lead differently. Right, Matt? Lead differently? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's awesome. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great day.